Hi there, I'm George Anderson. I'm here to help you learn how to make a honeysuckle bench. So there could be mowering going on, and I want you two to get along, okay? Can you two just get along, please? I started doing this because it's a good way to use up an invasive species and make something useful for everybody. These instructions for this bench are probably for the intermediate to possibly advanced woodworker, so you'll need to have some basic skills. First off, don't cut yourself. Also, you'll need, I believe, a bandsaw with an appropriate blade for cutting wet wood. That is a tougher 3 tooth per inch with a wider kerf. And then they're basic things, screwdrivers, drills, things of that nature. This is about as small a piece as really becomes viable. This is a little over an inch, almost 2 inches in diameter. And if you're not careful, this can split very easily. As you can see, there's a hole in the center of every piece of honeysuckle. So, as you're gathering the wood, you need to sort of curate and see what you're going to be cutting and how you're going to be using it. The larger pieces like this came from a big chunk of honeysuckle. This is great for planks. You can see the diameter of this one was probably 6 to 8 inches. This is an old piece of honeysuckle. This easily could have been 50, 60 years old. It also shows it's a blonde wood. This is unfinished. It's a nice blonde, tight-grained hardwood, and the sapwood, I guess you'd call it. The heartwood is often a kind of a light brown with tan streaks in it, and when it varnishes, it can be a very, very colorful, more honey-colored and darker. But it's a really hard wood. As you can see, the cat's been sampling these. But here's a good example of once the bark falls off, it's a very muscly wood, very muscled, strong, hard wood. It's good when gathering the honeysuckle to pre-visualize the parts you're going to need. In other words, straight pieces that are smaller, like 2 inches or 3 inches, are good for legs. Much larger than that, then they can split. Even forked pieces, we can get this out later, make for good legs when the kind of interesting leg stuff here. And planks need to be big logs, big wide logs that are, this is a big honeysuckle. This is from a large honeysuckle, but this would be a really good one for planks and stuff like that, for seats. Much smaller, the planks split easily, very easily. First thing I do after I gather the wood is cut into the pieces the legs length, shorter, like 18 inches or so for the legs, and then of course cutting up splitting the planks. I start with the end braces first. Once the legs are cut, then using the bandsaw, I cut these flats on the legs so that these braces can go on. Once this is the end piece. Okay, this is the front. These are called the braces. The legs, the braces, and the seat. These end braces, once they're on, and then I will use the bandsaw to cut a flat here for the front and back brace to attach to. I have already previously glued this together, so these are kind of ready to go. And then I'll block it up on the bench using whatever means you can to keep it from falling over. And then you add the side braces to this, and then you flip the whole thing over and put the seat planks on the top. So I'll start by doing, in that I've already pre-drilled these holes. Shouldn't be too tough to get this going. Voila. And you can see once working on a flat surface like this, it's a whole lot easier to keep things in line. And now I will flip it right side up, like this.
That's totally fine.
Luckily, I found a flat spot on my floor here, garage, to do this. And again, as you can see, I've already previously marked these, where they go, how they go, etc., etc. All these holes here have already been pre-drilled. And it's good to pre-drill with honeysuckle because it splits so easily. Even with this part that's not the heartwood. If I hadn't pre-drilled these holes, there's a higher possibility of the wood splitting with these kinds of screws that are self-tapping. So I always pre-drill. Here's the bit that I use, so it's countersunk. You don't have to make it look just like this. It just happens to be the wood I used and have. And also there's other, even we have that together, there's other options for seats. Just as an example, look like that. Obviously not on top of this wood here, but I will dry assemble the bench first, marking all the pieces to make sure it all fits. Then I'll take it apart and glue it together in sequence, starting with the end braces first, the bottom part, and then glue on the seats. About the glue, I like to use West Systems epoxy, which is very, very good, but it's expensive, and it takes acetone to clean it up. Tite Bond is a very good wood, Tite Bond 3. Tite Bond 3 is a very good wood glue for this. It is also waterproof, and it also is a water cleanup, which is really good. Also, with any of the glues, I add a little bit of sawdust to help thicken things up and fill the gaps and stuff like that. The gluing process is really, in my mind, pretty simple. I mix up the glue with a little bit of sawdust in it so that it is a little bit of a gap filler, and then I'll just sort of smear it on. I have a stick that's become popular for putting glue on. So I have. You always want to have what a good woodworker friend of mine called glue gush. It should come out of the joints. It should fill the gaps. Sometimes I will varnish things. If left unvarnished, honeysuckle will turn dark gray or black. And varnishing it is actually a pretty good idea, but the bark really absorbs varnish a lot. It's just like, as I've said earlier, like varnishing a sweater, but it's worth it in the very end. I started making these benches maybe 4 or 5 years ago. This is again a case where I realized there's a lot of wood to be gathered, and what should I do with it? And I decided I often go canoeing at the Olentangy River, which is down the street from my house. And I noticed a lot of people didn't have a place to sit, and also the abundance of honeysuckle everywhere. So once I found out that it's this very hard and dense wood, that I thought, well, let's give it a try making a bench. People need benches to sit on. So I thought it was hand in glove kind of a thing. And so some of them, as you may have noticed, are still existing after they've been out there for quite a while. I used to have a bunch of benches up and down Adena Brook. That's by the Park of Roses, goes past the Park of Roses. I've also had quite a few benches get washed away in floods. So that's another thing that happens. When you put things out in nature, well, either nature does its thing or humans do their thing. Sad but true. And so to wrap this up, have fun with this. Be careful. You're working with, in case if you have a bandsaw, you're working with power tools. But it's fun. If anything, engage with nature as you go out to gather this wood. And the woodworking is not difficult, so take your time, and it's okay. You cannot make any mistakes. because honeysuckle is not uniform, you get to make it that way, so make it on your own terms. It should be a fun project to do and be proud of what you do when you're finished.